talking about the natural options for ADHD. And so I have a list of 10. And I actually went to the ADHD Center in Greenville. And so just so you know, save this date, August 20th, this call is going to be taken over by the specialists at ADHD Center. And they're going to talk about the supplements and the nutritional deficiencies they see. And they're going to talk about myths with medication. They're going to do some content, and they're going to do at least 30 minutes of just a live Q&A. These are people I really trust that are not anti-supplements at all. If it works, they would push it. They even talked about CBD oil. Really good people. And so they're going to bring the two heads of the entire office. They're number one in the Southeast for ADHD treatment, 5 stars, found the perfect meds for me. So they're going to be coming on, and they're working on the content right now. And she's also going to be talking about some of this stuff in supplements as well. And then kids, I don't know if I mentioned that, but there's some really interesting findings of kids. She told me this today, that if kids get on ADHD medication before the age of 9 as their brain's developing, there's actually a less of a chance they'll need to be on medication as an ADHD adult. And there's more and more studies around that, which is kind of the opposite of what I think the myths out there. So anyways, very interesting. So this is the list of 10. I'm going to give it to you. And so this is let's say you came to me and you said, with my medication, I can't take stimulants. I can't take meds at all. Or I have this health thing. My doctor's not letting me, because I'm not saying I think meds can be amazing. It just depends on the person and what that looks like. So this is the list. This is what we would go through to kind of give you the best chance of really mitigating the symptoms or the traits that you don't want. Let's see. Somebody said July 23rd. So it's August 13th from 10 to 11 Central, and it's going to be on site at the convention center for Keller Williams Mega Camp. And we'll send that out tomorrow. So this is the ultimate list. If you came to me, or if you said I don't want to do it, and what you'll find with this list is that some of these might be a cure. I mean, we don't want to cure our brains, right? I don't ever want to not have ADHD. It's the reason I can be a crazy person driving around in a truck around the country. And by the way, they took my blood pressure today. I've had the lowest blood pressure that I've had in the last 10 years. And I've been on the road nonstop with things breaking on the RV. So that tells you sometimes if you're in a stressful environment, it might be because it's too slow. So apparently this makes me less stressed to be fixing an RV constantly. And a camper. So this is a list where we're going to kind of mitigate some of the traits or kind of rule some stuff out that might be turning the volume up on the traits. And then there are a couple things that actually might be something that could take the place of meds in a sense. It just depends on how it shows up. Everybody's different, right? So the first one, I want to talk about is nutritional deficiencies. This can be a big one. You've probably heard me say this if you've been on the calls before, but there are people that have literally been diagnosed with dementia just due to B12 deficiencies. Don't underestimate what a nutritional deficiency can do. We are low in vitamin D levels. There's things that we are normally lower than the average population in. I've heard so many people finding out their vitamin D levels are low. So if you can, and the insurance usually covers that, but B12 and vitamin D is usually covered by insurance. Almost every insurance will cover that. They may not cover magnesium, potassium, all the other stuff, but they do cover those. Check that. And what I've been told by doctors and the people I work with is you want to get your vitamin D levels over 50. Lower levels can cause brain fog, depression, low energy, all kinds of stuff. So look at that. And you might, if you read about and you have low vitamin D levels, talk to your doctor, because it might be that you're not taking enough. It might be that you take triple the dose and you need to take 4 times the dose, because it does build up in your system. It's not like you take it for a week and then your levels are up. Sometimes it takes months and months to build up. And so it's nice to work with a doctor, because you don't want to take too much, but you also don't want to take too little and then kind of be suffering or have a hard time. So vitamin D levels is really big. I've heard that over and over again from a lot of people. And then the B complex is really important for a lot of us. The B12, like I said, that helps with memory, focus, those kinds of stuff. And then a fish oil. And when I do the notes with this, I will give you a chart of the handout from the ADHD Center. You might have seen that before, but there's a certain ratio, and basically it's 1,000 milligrams of EPA. This is the omega-3 fish oil they recommend. 1,000 milligrams of EPA, and then 500 milligrams of DHA, omega fatty acids. So 1,000 milligrams of EPA with a ratio of 500 milligrams to DHA. If that'll make sense if you look at a bottle of it. The point I want you to make is, or the point I want to make is, not all fish oil is created the same, and it's not going to have the same effect in helping with ADHD. Like if you just go get one at Target, you want to look at the ratio and you want double the amount of EPA to DHA, with the ideal ratio of 1,000 milligrams of EPA and 500 milligrams of DHA. So check with your doctor. For some people, fish oil can be a blood thinner if you're already on blood thinner medication. So again, talk with your doctor around this stuff. But that can be something that you look at. Caffeine is another one. If you're not too sensitive to that, because our brains are understimulated. So caffeine can actually help. Do we have any who self-proclaimed like caffeine addicts on the call? I know we have some, yeah, where it's my friend is like, she can drink like Starbucks like 5 times a day, or coffee, and it's just yeah, it's she can just drink a ton and it helps her a lot. Whereas other people might be really sensitive to caffeine. You might get anxiety. Like for me, I get anxiety if I have any caffeine. And so it totally depends on your brain chemistry. And as you'll find out with meds, like one med might be great for one person, one might have terrible side effects with the other. So it just depends on that, you know. Yeah, so mushrooms, there's a lot of stuff, that we're researching, I think, that's, you know, starting to come out. And so you might find some of this stuff, and this is based on stuff that's really proven, but there might be some creative stuff. This is another thing. Has anybody heard of the food colorings or preservatives? Has anybody heard about that? Like making it worse, like yellow number 6, red 40, that was a big one that came out. So this is the Mayo Clinic, and they actually advise to, you know, really watch the dyes that you're having. So yellow number 6, yellow number 10, number 5, lots of yellow in there, red number 40. And so red 40, I think that's pretty common. It's in soft drinks, children's medication, desserts, ice cream. So that's one, and it doesn't affect everybody. So some of these may not affect you at all, whereas other ones totally do. Another one that they talked about, a food coloring preservative, is sodium benzoate. Sodium benzoate. So this is the Mayo Clinic, and it's found in carbonated beverages, salad dressings, and fruit juice products. So again, play with these. It doesn't mean you have to like kick any of them out of your diet. You just never know. And when you're, you know, if you're waiting to go on medication, it's kind of cool to play with stuff to see what your baseline is, if you want to go that route, and just see how things affect you. But if you're already on medications, you pull them out, you can probably feel a difference as well. So the food dyes is something that people look at. Also, remember that we have like a lower dopamine levels. And so sugar, if you're doing a lot of sugar, it can almost, they've shown in the brain sometimes can act like cocaine. Similar, not the same, obviously, but sugar can do that. And so if you're constantly giving yourself sugar and you're kind of increasing the dopamine kind of response, then it can actually show up outside of that. So if you're, I don't want to compare it to like addictions, you know, I mean, I've seen some cases, but I think that's not what I'm referring to here. It's kind of like if you're kind of like reinstilling this, like, I need a dopamine hit, let me have all this sugar, and then it can kind of mess with your dopamine levels a little bit. So it doesn't mean you have to kick out all sugar. It's just if you're a huge candy addict, you might want to be intentional. It doesn't mean you can't have candy. It just means if you're hitting it all day, every day, there might be some alternatives that then kind of get you off of that cycle a little bit. And also, I want to go back to caffeine for just a second. So with caffeine, they don't know why, but for a lot of us, and this is why stimulants actually calm our brain down. So if you don't have ADHD, taking caffeine or the stimulants we take can be like taking a speed pill. But for us, it can actually calm us down. So you might hear some people say, oh, I could take Red Bull and take a nap, you know? Some people say that. So it can actually help us regulate. Yeah, the supplements. Now, as for like the supplements that they put out there, oh, take this supplement pack for ADHD, brain juice, or, you know, whatever that is. The evidence is mixed. For some people it works, some people it does not at all. So that's why I'm not recommending certain like homeopath pills, because it's so across the map, and I couldn't find any studies where it was like a proven thing that it worked. So it might be something that you try. I know some people in our community have ordered it, hasn't done anything. And I think someone else in the community has ordered it and it did. So I would say more often than not, it doesn't really affect it as much, but you never know. And it just depends on how dedicated or how like firm you are on not exploring medication, because meds can be an easy pill for some. So that was a bigger one. Number one, nutritional deficiencies, supplements, caffeine. The next one is hormones and thyroid. So this is one I hear a lot is, I feel like my ADHD is getting worse. And this is someone who might be getting older. You know, does ADHD get worse with age? Especially I've had a lot of women remind me to tell people to get their hormones checked. If you have a thyroid issue, even from as a kid, you can get misdiagnosed with ADHD. You can also have both. You can have a thyroid issue and ADHD and hormones. But hormones can absolutely make ADHD feel worse and turn the volume up. So there's no such thing as like adult onset ADHD that I've heard about, unless you have some traumatic weird thing that alters your brain. Because remember, our brains, 4 parts of the brain develop differently. So you're not going to change the structure of a brain. We are stuck like this, which is great. I want to be stuck like this. This is really cool. And it'd be weird if all of a sudden I could just sit and watch boring stuff and not be myself. So you're never going to change. Your brain isn't going to change. The gifts aren't going to change. So get your hormones checked if you feel like it's getting worse. It doesn't get worse with age. ADHD is not progressive. It's not like a disease. I had that question at one of my ADHD speeches. It's not a disease. It doesn't get worse. Get your hormones checked, get your thyroid checked. That can really make things bigger. Number 3, this is interesting. So the outdoors, and I'm leaving some of the more like sleep and exercise towards the end, because I want to give you the stuff you probably haven't heard first. So outdoors, so they actually did studies with people with ADHD, and they showed that 20 minutes outside improves concentration. So 20 minutes outside, and later in the list, we're going to talk about exercise and what the studies show with that. But if you were able to do a 15 to 20 minute walk outside once a day, wherever you want, it could be slow or fast. Even just that could be a big deal for helping with ADHD. So 20 minutes, green space, just being in nature can be huge. And it can actually on scans like light up the brain and kind of engage it in ways where it might be more dim potentially, depending on what you're doing. So that's the third one. So the fourth one is PTSD and trauma work. So if you have trauma, you might have heard me talk about this before, with ADHD and being neurodivergent, we are much more likely to have PTSD. And there are multiple factors for that. One of those is because we take in a lot more sensory stuff and a lot more data in our environments. And so if there's a traumatic experience, we might be experiencing even more of it. So that can be one reason. We can be a little bit more sensitive, right? Noises might have a bigger impact on us. Sounds, all those different things. So we experience things at a higher level. That's why we can get overstimulated more easily sometimes. So we can be more likely to have PTSD or trauma. As a coach, a lot of people, even without ADHD, have trauma. That's just, normal. It depends on the situation. And then also, we're more likely sometimes to have PTSD, depending on the situation, because we might not always trust ourselves to get out, or we might see the best in people. I've done that as well, where you just think the best, because we tend to be a population that really wants to help and have high integrity. So it's hard to see darkness in people if you don't have it sometimes. And so we might be more trusting because that's just how we are there's a lot of reasons. I'm not even scratching the surface, but essentially what having trauma and PTSD can do, there's a big overlap between the two. There's actually, if you look at any other diagnosis compared to ADHD, and rule out autism for that, let's just say ADHD, there's no other diagnosis that has as many shared traits as PTSD and trauma, which is why you might have heard the myths or the people who are ill-informed that say, well, trauma causes ADHD. That's just a load of bull. There's so many studies proving that that's not true. But there are some big names like Dr. Gabor Mate who have pushed that narrative, and it's not based on the studies. He's got some good stuff, but not on this. So trauma does not cause PTSD. It can cause trouble focusing, brain fog, memory issues, feeling overstimulated, isolating, having trouble sleeping, feeling frozen, feeling paralyzed, having your nervous system constantly up where it's almost like you have an internal motor that doesn't quiet, it doesn't stop, right? So there's a lot of overlap. So when you have trauma and you haven't worked with a trauma therapist or someone that you feel really safe with, it can make your ADHD feel way worse. And if you have trauma and you know that, and you still have some work to do on it or some healing to do, your ADHD will probably, the traits that you don't like will probably get a lot better. So it's not going to be like this forever. Once you do that and you can calm your nervous system, it's going to turn the volume down so much on that. And so we had a call with an incredible trauma therapist. So if you want more information or how to find a trauma therapist, or you just want that call, it's in the recordings, the list of all the recordings we have. Ina, if you could type that in the chat. And then it's also something that we can send out. So we just dropped the link in there. So those are all the recordings we had. But look at the trauma therapist one. That was a great call. I think we had the most opens. If you look at this, over the 60 weeks I've done this, out of every single newsletter we've sent out with notes and a recording, the one that's been opened the most in a whole year was the one on trauma and ADHD. So if you have trauma, I want you to know you are not alone. You're actually part of the majority, and not a lot of people are talking about it. But it's normal, you know. So trauma work, that can do huge. So kind of going back through so far, you've addressed your nutritional deficiencies. You've seen if you have any deficit. You might be using caffeine. You got your hormones checked. You're spending 20 minutes outside to get concentration, maybe even in the middle of the day if you need it. And then you've done some trauma work. Just those 4 are going to get you very far. The next one is food allergies and diet. So food allergies, there's actually a huge correlation between mast cell activation syndrome and method. I can't even pronounce it. Like there's different things with our body that are connected to ADHD, and histamine is a big one too. And so a lot of us, what mast cell activation is we can have a little bit more trouble processing histamine. There's a little bit more to it, but long story short, if you have food allergies, it doesn't mean your lips are going to puff up and your face is going to turn red. It might be just like you might have a lot of anxiety. You think it's anxiety, and it's a low level allergic reaction to dairy or gluten, or maybe just the chemicals they use to process gluten in the US. I can't eat gluten here. It makes me crazy, but I can eat it in other countries, but not here. So it might be the chemicals they use actually to process the gluten. That's why gluten-free is so big from a lot of the research. It's not because everybody can't do wheat. Some people can't. Celiac is a real thing. It's just there's more of an intolerance to it because it's the chemicals they use in the US to process flour, where I can eat a pizza and cookies in Jamaica all day, you know, or in Turkey. It's kind of crazy. So you may play with them. So it might be that you just eliminate one thing. Yeah, low histamine diet. I have a histamine intolerance. It's more common with ADHD. We also have hypermobility. We can also have more predisposed to like autoimmune stuff. There's a kind of a trifecta, and I have somebody I'm actually going to bring on to talk about that. So yeah, so when you're kind of doing this stuff, you might do one at a time to kind of see, because if you're doing it all at once, then you may not isolate what it actually is. If you're pulling out gluten and working on your nutritional deficiencies and you feel better, it might not have been the gluten, you know, or maybe it was. So it's a little bit easier if you do one at a time, or maybe you're just ready to feel better and who cares, do it all, you know? So food allergies again, and allergies can release cortisol and endorphins, and histamine actually cause brain fog and memory stuff. So food allergies are a bigger thing. Like I said, I have someone that's going to come on. Low blood sugar. So we can have a weaker connection with reading our body cues when we're hungry, when we're thirsty, when we're tired, when we're hot, when we're cold, right? If you've gone all day and forgot to eat, oh my gosh, I need to drink water, I'm dehydrated. So low blood sugar is way more common for us because or executive function. Man, have you ever been hungry and you just couldn't make food for yourself and it was easier to just not eat and deal with the hunger? then okay, I've done that a lot. Yeah. Where it's like you go to the fridge, you look, and just nothing's, you just can't make yourself eat. So you go sit back down. It's like, okay, I can last a little bit longer. And maybe you just eat and you grab nuts or cheese or something high calorie when it's like your blood sugar is low. So that's kind of a pattern we can get in. If your blood sugar is low, that's going to make you feel brain fog. You're going to be more likely dysregulated. You're going to be more sensitive to things. There's a lot of stuff. And so having, especially as a real estate agent, you want to have granola bars, like stuff that you don't have to cook. Expect that cooking might be hard for you if it has been in the past. Some people not, but expect that it might be instead of expecting that it won't be, and then having low blood sugar over and over again. So yeah, that low blood sugar thing, food allergies can be big. Diet, like I said, if you're doing a lot of sugar or things that you metabolize really fast, then all of a sudden it can make you crash. Energy. So check that out. Number 6 is gut health. So this was actually crazy. I went, because I was kind of exploring every angle to be able to speak to it, plus for myself. I went and got a gut health check. And they actually, you send in samples. I won't say what you send in, but basically something, you send something in and they will analyze it, and they'll tell you exactly what's going on in your gut, whether you have too much candida, if there's inflammation. There's more and more studies about how our gut is linked to our brain. There's so much more coming out about that. And so because there's like kind of a balance. It's my naturopath, she's also a microbiologist from the UK, explained it like your gut is kind of a garden, and you don't want, there's going to be some weeds that grow, and that's normal. You can't get them all, but you don't want it overgrown with weeds. And my gut was overgrown with weeds. And that's basically the bad bacteria. There was a lot, because I had some surgeries with antibiotics and stuff like that. And then just, stress can grow like fungus more, that kind of stuff. So when you do a gut health check, you can find out what strains of bacteria you have in there, like what good bacteria and bad bacteria, because it might be that you're taking a probiotic, but you already have a surplus of a certain bacteria in there, and you're just adding more. You don't really need it, but you might need a certain strain of something, and you might need a powerful, potent dose of it for a while to get it back to where it needs to be. So then it overpowers the weeds. So gut health check can be really cool if that's something you can afford. I do have a person who does that, and I think it's pretty reasonable, but insurance isn't covered. So I'll have her on one time to talk about that. Okay, so that was number 6. Number 7, so EEG and biofeedback. I want to actually pull this report up because this was one that people are, and I've gotten personal feedback actually from the class I did in New Mexico, I think, or maybe it was El Paso, that it was a big thing for them. So EEG biofeedback, it's a neurotherapy. Wow, I tried too hard to say that. And it measures brain waves. And they actually have like video games that you can concentrate on. They put I've done it before, and they put electrodes on your brain. They're just like stuck on there. And you play a game and you try to keep it's like a video game. You try to keep the bird keep flying, right? So what it does though is the bird flies up when your brain goes into certain brain waves. So it trains your brain and rewards it for kind of thinking a certain way and concentrating and doing a certain pattern. So that can be really cool as well. I haven't dug as deep into that, but it's something that I'm going to look more into. And I'm not sure on the doctors. I did it because I got diagnosed with major depression when I was 10. So I actually did it more when I was a kid because my mom didn't know what else to do and the meds weren't working. And turned out I had ADHD, autism, and OCD, but we did a lot of the neurofeedback, and I think it did help. Yeah, EEG neurofeedback, you could just Google your city and kind of look at the reviews. Okay, so then that's number 7. So our next 3 are ones that you've probably heard before. And well, actually, no, the next 2. So movement and exercise, besides sleep, which is what we're going to talk about in a second, there is not very little that actually lights up and regulates the brain with ADHD as much as movement does. This is from a doctor, like a primary care doctor, talked to me about this, who also is into naturopath stuff. So any kind of movement, especially if you have the hyperactive type, or if you have anxiety. Because what happens is our brain is understimulated, so it's trying to regulate. And so with the hyperactive type, right, we're moving and we're stimulating. Our brain's trying to do that the whole time. That's what it's doing normally. So if you can't sit still and you're restless, it's because your brain's protecting you from feeling like crappy or understimulated or getting dysregulated. And so just give it even more of what it needs and say, hey, here you go, buddy. Like, let's go for a walk, let's go for a bike ride. Let's rollerblade. Let's do Zumba. It doesn't have to be this like firm gym routine. It can be a really fun activity with other people, bowling, anything that's going to get your body moving. For a lot of people, calling it movement feels less rigid than exercise. So get some movement in, move your body, dance in your office, whatever that looks like. And anxiety can help too, because when we look at the inattentive type is similar to the hyperactive type in that you have all this extra energy, but instead of it coming out and you showing it with your body's calm, but it's in here and it's this internal chatter that doesn't quiet. So play with movement and see if it quiets it. Because some people think that constant chatter is the brain's way of stimulating itself. And so if you have a lot of chatter, it might be interesting to kind of do some movement and see like, oh, okay, this is doing it. Or maybe you just have an inner dialogue and that's cool. And that's how it is, or maybe a bit of both. So movement, it doesn't have to be perfect. It could be at lunch. It could be little. Don't think it's got to be some extreme exercise routine. Okay. So number 9, I know we're at time, so I'll take just a second or two here on this. So number 9, sleep. And that can be harder for us too. So when I say sleep, some people it's like, I'm trying, so if you have issues with sleep, check out, get a sleep test. Like if your partner or whoever says that you snore, stop breathing, sleep apnea is not uncommon. So get that checked because that can make a whole difference. If you have undiagnosed sleep apnea and you have ADHD, it's going to be way worse until you get a hold of the sleep apnea. And interesting story, I got diagnosed with sleep apnea 10 years ago. And 3 years in, I cured it. I think it was weight loss and pulling out inflammatory foods and allergies. So I don't think it's as common, but it's also not like, there's not stuff you can't do about it if you get diagnosed with it. But until you've really like made it go away, most people, it's just stays. I don't, maybe I'm a weirdo, but until you address it and it's really gone, then you really want to use the stuff for that. And just throwing it out there, another thing, if you have sleep apnea, they do have that machine. A lot of people don't know, there's also, instead of the machine, there's stickers you put on your nose. And they made it accidentally for working construction workers to not breathe in dust. And they actually found it worked for sleep apnea. So when I was 24 and I didn't want to like go hang out with people or sleep over or whatever and have a machine, there's stickers that just stick on your nose and they actually help with sleep apnea. So there's another alternative. I'd say it was 75% as effective as the machine for me, because I know we have some people on the call who have sleep apnea. So sleep, you don't have to get 8 hours. Not everybody needs 8 hours. If they say if you're not tired during the day, then like it doesn't mean you need 8 hours. Some people need 6, 7, depends on your genetics and your biology. And then kind of going with sleep, yeah, somebody talked about meditation. So meditation can help some people for sure. It's almost like neurofeedback. It can help people go to sleep. It can help people in general. And then some people, meditation is harder and it makes it worse. So if meditation works for you, there are some people, yoga, Tai Chi, that have really used that for ADHD, and it's been helpful. And then number 10, this is our last one before we go to the Q&A, environment. So this is where a coach, a therapist, your own research, being on these calls, if your environment is set up for a neurotypical person and you have the expectations of a neurotypical person, but you're neurodivergent, it's going to feel way worse and it's going to be harder. So if you've got some super rigid routine without a lot of play and without flexibility, and you're beating yourself up and you're using shame as a way to do that, and you're not having fun on the weekends, and you're not honoring how your brain works, and you're making yourself sit in meetings and bright lights for hours and hours and hours, or on Zoom for hours, stuff's going to feel harder. So you might notice that you do none of these except for build your environment around your brain. And all of a sudden your symptoms feel way better, because, and that's why I kind of interchange them with the word traits, because your traits might be made for a different environment or a different job or a different type of lead gen or a different way of time blocking. So if you're constantly, doing this and have a whole environment that doesn't fit you in a schedule and home life. Like if you've got sensory stuff, but your sheets are scratchy and you don't have like lights that light the mood and are better than these bright, like your stuff is going to feel bigger if you don't have a partner that's supportive, that gives you a hard time all the time about you forgetting stuff. It's going to exemplify the traits when, if you're in a different environment, they might not feel that big of a deal, So, those are really the 10. And you'll see that, there's not anybody that says, here's this secret cure to ADHD or this special supplement that the doctors don't know about or don't want you to have. That's all BS. I'm telling you, I've clicked on all of it to make sure. Well, maybe not all of it. There's a lot out there, but be careful of the gurus who think they have it, because I got a question when I did this in New Mexico. One of the first questions was, Tony Robbins says ADHD isn't a real thing. That was one of the questions she had. And Tony Robbins is right about a lot of the stuff, but he's also human. And what can happen sometimes, and I don't think it's ill meaning, is that they see a lot in what they're doing and in the environment or whatever, and then they make a bias, right? And they've been right about other stuff, but they don't read thousands of medical studies in different environments that were controlled, that were by, specialists who know how to do research studies and read things, So, and then you have other people that really aren't good, and it's maybe just driven by ego. And it's like, who doesn't click on something like, here's the secret cure to ADHD, or here's what doctors don't want you to know, or, this thing caused this or whatever. So just watch out for people that claim to have some secret, and that's for anything, normally if there's something that works, it's generally out there, for the most part. So just to recap these 10, look for nutritional deficiencies, especially vitamin D, B12, use caffeine if you want to get your hormones and thyroid checked. If it feels like your ADHD is getting worse with age, 20 minutes of outdoor time in green space improves concentration over and over again in studies. Trauma, there's a lot of overlap with ADHD. And if you haven't done trauma work, it can make things way worse. Turn the volume up. Food allergies for sure, and allergies in the environment can mimic or make ADHD symptoms worse. Low blood sugar, food colorings, preservatives, watch for those. Gut health, neurofeedback can be really helpful. 15 minutes of exercise or movement a day, sleep, and then environment, watching your environment. So you do these 10 things and really get your baseline, and then that can make a huge difference. And there's a whole list to work on. So if you can't start meds yet, or you're choosing not to, you have something you can do now. So that is the content. Well, thank you for today.